Hey guys, here with my Browning High Power today. Yes. Let's see here, actually, I'll give you a close up here. I really love the Browning High Power. It's a 9mm. It's called the High Power because it's supposed to, when it came out, it was the first semi-automatic handgun to hold 13 rounds. Saw action in police forces around the world, and it was designed by John Browning. Now, before I go into this, I just wanted to say, as you may remember from my last gun tale, which was with Omega, which is my Ruger GP100 357 Magnum revolver. I just wanted to say, because I didn't say this in the last video, that having a revolver is sort of a big deal for me because it's a quintessentially American invention. The revolver was invented by Samuel Colt. And you can't get a Colt revolver in California because they won't play by California's gun rules, so you can simply not get a new Colt handgun in California because they're not on the California roster of approved handguns. So you can't have a Colt in California unless it's been bought used or some such. So anyway, so the revolver is this amazing invention because prior to the revolver, they had the flintlock, and that was it. And Colt he remembered hearing soldiers talk about how they would love nothing more than to have a sidearm that could fire more than one round, but which was alas not to be. And so he got it in his head that supposedly he was inspired to create the wheel that holds the 6 rounds by watching a ship's wheel being turned on a ship to guide the ship, the wheel. And he got the idea possibly for the idea of the 6 round chamber from that. And maybe it was 5 rounds back then, I don't know. And then he, not only did he invent this, he put the money together to invent it, he crafted it. Then he had to convince the military to buy it, and they were very leery of it. But it turned out that about that time America was having the war, the battles in Texas. And the soldiers there who were fighting these battles had somehow gotten hands on some of these revolvers. And they came and they were sent through one of their best members specifically to request that the military get them more because they were single-handedly responsible for winning battles against the Mexican troops and also the American Indians that were there. The soldiers would fire these revolvers from 2 hands, wielding them 2 of them simultaneously, giving them a total of 12 rounds, giving one soldier the possibility of taking down 12 enemy soldiers. This was a big deal, and that's one of the reasons why we have Texas. As far as I understand, I'm not a huge buff. Most of this is just learned from reading online. I'm not a historian, but that was my understanding of the story, and so I view the revolver as like a big step forward, I suppose. And we want to look at armament as steps forward, and the development of both America and of firearms, and of American and of individual freedom. Well, in a very indirect way, I suppose. So anyway, that's one of the things I wanted to say about the revolver and why I think they're meaningful, because every time you see a revolver, what you're seeing is an American invention. And now let's come to the Browning. Yes, so as you know, guys, last time I left off with Omega, it turned out that revolver was defective when I first got it. I had to send it back. But since I was under threat of my life at the time, I didn't really feel like sending it back, so I had to stay with it. So, I knew I needed another gun to cover for the defective gun so I could have, I had some protection. It just jammed every so often, right? But I would need a second gun so I could get the first one fixed, and I didn't really plan to get another gun. You see, I thought that getting the Omega or the revolver was such a big deal for me. I never imagined I'd ever get another gun again. I mean, why would I need to? Why would I want to? Just shit, it was already supposed to be the most effective handgun caliber for self-defense. Why would I ever need another gun? One thing I found, though, is that when you were cleaning your revolver, which involved disassembly, Well, you didn't have a gun while you were cleaning your other gun, and that was sort of a vulnerability. And, I guess if something had happened, they'd talk about having a backup gun, but I still hadn't planned to get another one until the one I had didn't work. So then I was like researching, okay, so I'm going to get another gun. I didn't want to get another revolver because, I don't know, I didn't want to get another GP100, I don't know. And, a lot of people had said that many people had semi-automatics and they had revolvers, but they had handguns, and because the two complemented each other in various ways. And a semi-automatic typically held more rounds and was, you could reload it a lot faster than a revolver. So I started thinking about it, and then I researched ammunition, and I came up between basically the 45 and the 9mm, but there was so much argument and back and forth about which one of those was a better round that eventually I chose the 9mm because I thought it would have less recoil, which would be better for me. So anyway, but I still couldn't figure out what gun I wanted. I just kept reading about this handgun and reading about that, over and over again. And everyone I looked at and everyone I saw, none of them were at all that, just didn't click with me. I don't know why. It was mostly online. And I kept looking and looking and just never really seemed to find, anything that appealed to me. And, I was really looking at the H&K USP 45, but every time I looked at it, I sort of got a sick feeling in my stomach. Nothing against the gun, I'm sure it's great. H&K was, my dad had a couple of those, and they were awesome. But, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. And so I was wondering about this, and then one day Spirit said Browning. And, at that time, I hadn't ever heard of Browning before. She said, no, Browning. I don't know where it came from. It was just Browning. Okay, so I looked up Browning. And that's when I discovered the beautiful world of John Browning, John Moses Browning, who basically is, after perhaps Colt and a couple others, Ruger and Smith and Wesson, but probably even before those, he is one of the premier geniuses of handgun, firearms, machine gun design that in the history of humanity that we know about. This guy was really unbelievable. He started out, designing handguns in his dad's shop, when he was like 5 or 6, and sold his first gun in his teenage years, and was full-fledged designing ever after that. The 50 cal BMG, Browning designed that. That's the 50 caliber machine gun that was used all through World War II, and is still in use in the United States military today. Active, constant use. That's a good design. You have to admit that. That's a pretty good design when your 50 caliber design is the longest running weapon in the United States military history, essentially, okay? He also developed a venerable 1911, which we can get to later. But this design was actually, he was the one who first developed the semi-automatic shotgun. And in many ways, the slide that I just showed you right here, he invented that. He was the first person, I think, to really work with slides and semi-automatic handguns. One of the first semi-automatic handguns was the Luger, the German Luger, the Nazi Luger one, that really distinctive one that Nazi officers carried. That was one of the first, and what it does is it doesn't have a slide. It has a little, it has like a special mechanism that goes up and then down, and it actually retracts with respect atop the gun, you see. It doesn't have a slide with a spring inside. It's very interesting, but he was the one he invented the slide mechanism on a shotgun, on a semi-automatic shotgun, and then he migrated it, if I understand this correctly, I'm very tertiary in my understanding of this, to the handguns. So the 9mm was a request from European governments to actually have a very well-functioning 9mm handgun. And it has some of the similar attributes to a 1911 with the cocked hammer, single action, mechanism. And, but what's interesting about it is that this was actually the design that John Browning was working on when he died. He had, gotten about so fairly far forward to completion, and he was actually supposedly working on this design when he passed away. Literally possibly over the desk at the time. It's not clear, but. And so it was finished, design was finished by his son, who was also actually, this is really a trip, who fought in World War II with the weapons his dad had designed. Can you imagine that? What a trip. And survived, too. I don't know, I don't know a lot of details, but ostensibly, yeah, Browning designed a bar. I don't know if any of you guys are World War II buffs or like to play close combat, but the Browning automatic rifle, that's the Browning automatic rifle, one of the seminal weapons that helped, helped us win World War II. Browning was awesome, man. And the thing about this is that, when you have this gun here, I mean, there's something kind of quintessential about it, but when you hold this or when you point this, it just feels like an extension of your hand. It's just like, wow, I mean, all the other guns, they're really cool, but you're carrying them. Was this just like, and it's like, fudge. It's also the only handgun that has never jammed on me. Well, I mean, my semi-automatic shotguns, it's just the way it is, pumps aren't a problem usually, but almost every other weapon I've had, if it's a semi-automatic, it's jammed at some point, and this one has never jammed, never. Really something else, okay? I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's really amazing. The only deal I have with it is that sometimes when I fire a series, I for some reason seem to drift a little to the left, and I'm not sure if the sights need to be zeroed, or because I don't have that with other handguns. I don't think it's a flinch or anything, so... But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just need more practice. I'm hardly like one-eyed hero here with a handgun or something. I just like working with them. So anyway, so that's how I got Alpha, because I needed something to cover for the other gun, and I remember looking, and finally I searched for Browning, and I came up with this, and I was just staring at it on my iPad, and I was like, wow, I just knew that was one I wanted to have. It was the first one. Wow. And it was over $1,200, making it the most expensive purchase I made in handguns, and and I don't know, again, it was really tough. I sold some stuff, I think, and I wasn't paying rent at that point. And I was scared, so I managed to make it work. So, that's a matter of speaking, I guess. But so anyway, I remember I went to the gun shop because I was having a heck of a time getting it, because first I wanted a different make of it, which was very hard to find, and then I got the standard model, which is actually, I think, better. And this has adjustable sights too, and then I put on the Hogue grip. I love Hogue grips, man. And so then I was, I went to the gun store to order it, and they were saying, well, you want to try some other stuff first? So I tried almost every handgun they had. I tried the Springfield 1911. I tried, all these other handguns. We're talking about trying Desert Eagles, or trying all sorts of fun things. And after trying every one of them, they were all cool. I said, well, can we get a Browning in here so I can try it? Can I order one? So they ordered one for me, and then it came, and it's just awesome. Awesome, especially has meaning for me because of the father-son kind of thing about it. I mean, I think that's meaningful. Not only was it designed by one of the best, handgun weapon designers, firearm designers that the world has ever known, but it's a father-son, compilation, and I think that's meaningful too, So anyway, and so that's I called it Alpha because, the one's Omega, and I told you where I got the quote, or what way I viewed that quote. And, it was really just, I used to say this to her, are you sure I shouldn't get a 45? Are you sure I shouldn't get the H&K USB? It can be configured 9 different ways. She says, well, you really should get a firearm that has the spiritual power to protect you, she told me. And so... got this one. I gotta tell you that, even if even if there was, I never, never involved, hopefully, in some sort of life and death encounter, or, even so, it's just the symbolism in many ways of these weapons is as much of a protection, it seems, from, especially as an artist. And I don't know if, I say this, I don't know if many people really can understand that, but, yeah, physical protection is really important. They're very important that way, but they have I feel like weapons and musical instruments seem to have a presence that goes beyond just their structure. And so, that's one of the reasons why almost every firearm I've ever gotten has a blued finish, which comes from photography, you see, because in photography you're supposed to wear dark colors so it's that the light reflecting off of you doesn't interfere with your pictures. So anyway, so that's sort of like many nights. I gotta tell you, for several months, in the middle, at night, you're sitting there like smoking a joint, listening to the zombies howl around you. This was the one thing that made it bearable.